Greetings, loved ones. Let's take a journey to Derry, Maine, the setting of Stephen King's second longest biblical epic of a novel, It. With Valentine's Day around the corner, I've been thinking much about love stories. I don't read romance and I'm scared of smut, so when I think of love stories, my list is short and old. It's Wuthering Heights, Emma, The Fault in Our Stars, etc. All stories I love, but none I'd consider my favorites. But if you asked me, do I love love stories? Yes, I'd say, fuck yes, I'd continue. But I feel many love stories end up trapped in another genre. It, like many of King's works, has been confined to the genre of horror. And yes, this is a horror novel, but it is first and foremost a love story. In fact, I think it is the greatest love story ever written. Quick disclaimer, this is just a fun video. I am not speaking for Stephen King. I couldn't if I wanted to. These are my opinions and thoughts. As stated before, this is a horror novel. There are graphic horror elements in it. If you don't like that stuff, I don't know how you got this far. Leave now. There will definitely be spoilers, but I've tried to keep it minimal. I think you could hear my case and still enjoy the novel, but if you don't want to risk it, don't risk it. The novel opens and 11-year-old Bill Denbrough is putting the finishing touches on a paper boat for his little brother Georgie. Recovering from an illness, Bill can't join him, so Georgie sets off alone in his yellow rain slicker to play with his boat in the rainwater. And the feelings which filled him at that moment was clear and simple love for his brother Bill. That is the last time Bill sees his baby brother. Georgie talks to the clown in the storm drain, and it cost him his life. You see, the town of Derry, Maine has an interesting history. Every 27 years, darkness takes a hold of the town and children are murdered serially and brutally for 12 to 18 months. Then the darkness rests for 27-ish years and the cycle repeats. Georgie's death marks the start of a series of killings in 1958. Bill, despite his stutter, is loved and respected by his friends. They adore him. They look up to him. He is, by all accounts, the leader of the Losers Club. Each member a loser in their own right. Eddie is a classic Munchausen by proxy baby. Richie's got a big mouth, beep beep. Ben has a big belly, but an even bigger heart. Stan is Jewish in 1958. Micah's black in 1958. And Beverly is poor. Each loser is ruthlessly and uniquely tortured by the big, dumb, and dangerous Henry Bowers and his entourage of bullies. The barrens and unused forested part of town by the landfill and the sewer pump stations are where they feel safe, so the festering bacteria and the adverse commute mean very little. In 1985, It returns, and resident librarian Mike Hanlon, the last loser in Derry, calls the others home. The other 6 are highly successful and very far away, and they've forgotten their past completely. But the phone call from Mike begins to bring their memories back. Maybe this isn't home, nor ever was. Maybe home is where I have to go tonight. Home is the place where when you go there, you have to finally face the thing in the dark. Bill, now grown, now a famous author, stutters for the first time in decades as he explains to his wife, Audra, a famous actor who happens to resemble Beverly, whom he has forgotten, that he is going back to Derry. Stan kills himself upon ending the phone call. Beverly, who unknowingly married a man just like her father, fights for her life to come home. The closer the losers get to home, the more they remember. They remember each other, and they remember that they loved each other. They loved each other as friends. And though each boy treats Beverly with their own sort of sweetness, Ben loves Beverly from the beginning. Lost in daydreams of him and Beverly, patted extra sweet by a haiku he just wrote for her, Ben leaves the library in a love haze. Ben's daydreams are interrupted by Henry Bowers, and it is clear Henry plans to give more than a beating when he starts carving his name in Ben's belly with a switchblade. He gets through the H before Ben makes a run for his life into the Barrens where he meets Bill and Eddie. Ben is accepted into the Losers Club quickly and seamlessly. He helps them build a dam in the creek, and they appreciate and respect that. Richie and Stan join them in the Barrens as well. Richie always asking, first and foremost, "You having any good checks or what?" As the losers start finding their way to the Barrens, Bill shares his first interaction with Pennywise the Clown. Terror rises and love grows as they each share their own unique yet similar experiences with what they call it. Bill's love for Georgie manifests in his visions of it. The horror of losing Georgie is inextricably tied to Bill's love for him. There were times when he felt he loved George best in his fear, because even in his fear, his uneasy feelings that a zombie George might be lurking in the closet or under the bed, he could remember loving George better in there, and George loving him. In his effort to reconcile these two emotions, his love and his terror, Bill felt that he was closest to finding where final acceptance lay. With some of his horrible and incredibly outdated bad voices and a yo-yo, Richie makes friends with Beverly. And Bev finds her way into the Losers Club the same way Ben did, after a chase down from Henry Bowers. When Beverly reveals her encounter with it, a voice in the drain followed by a blood spray, the loser's first instinct is to help her clean it up. She could not remember ever having meant thanks so deeply. Thank you all. As he wanders the streets of Derry, adult Bill stumbles upon his old bike for sale in a pawn shop. Old and clunky, but Bill loved it then and now. He buys the bike he had called Silver as a kid. Despite the grim circumstances he has returned in, Bill's heart swells with nostalgia for his childhood. When the adults reunite in Derry Public Library after a day of being tortured uniquely by it, Beverly watches Eddie pour some gin into a paper cup of prune juice and says, "Oh, Eddie, I do love you," Beverly says. And Eddie looks up, startled but smiling. She gazes up and down the table. "I love all of you." The losers' friendship is rooted in the pure, unguarded love of childhood. Their connection, formed in the freedom of the Barrens, is a reminder of the power of loving simply and deeply, as children do. It's this kind of love, raw, innocent, and unwavering, that allows them to confront darkness not as individuals, but as a united force bound by a shared childhood and unconditional love. Only children can see it, because their imaginations allow them to process its horrors, which manifests as their own deepest fears. As a kid, I was able to deal with it, but it's different with kids. In some fundamental way, it's different. But the people, the adults of Derry, cannot see it. They feel its terror, the reign of murder. After all, it is their children dying. Derry folk had lived with Pennywise in all his guises for a long time. And maybe, in some mad way, they had even come to understand him, to like him, need him, love him. Maybe. Yes, maybe that too. The people of Derry have lived with it for so long that they've come to understand its terror as a part of their reality. They need or love him because trauma can create an attachment to something terrifying as a way of coping with it. Love shapes their reality because love fuels their imaginations. But they are also kids, and they are unwise to the mean games people who love them will play. Beverly's father abusing her under the guise of, "I worry about you." Eddie's mother explains when he learns his asthma medicine is nothing but water. "Eddie," she would say, "it's medicine because your mother's love makes it medicine." King is not afraid to showcase the evil and the abuse that exist under a veil of love. Henry Bowers' father is even crazier than he is. Henry's father is proud of Henry for doing arguably the most evil act within these 1,100 pages because it was a crime against a black family, and his father rewards him with a beer. It was the first beer Henry had ever had, and for the rest of his years he would associate that taste with positive emotions, victory, and love. Mike Hanlon, the last loser to join the club, arrives at the Barrens being chased by Henry Bowers and his crew. the losers are quick to defend Mike without hesitation. "You come over here right now," Henry said, "and maybe I won't kill you." Mike trembled, but did not move. Speaking softly and clearly, Bill said, "The Babarons are ours. You kids get out of here." Then the losers pelt the bullies with rocks, defending each other more than their own individual selves, and run them out of the barrens, bloodied and scared. This moment deep down convinces the losers that they can conquer it. The more the kids interact with it, the more they understand its games and bounds. They recognize it draws on their fears, often the fears most forward in their mind, like a horror movie character. It was kid stuff, but it seemed that was what this thing thrived on. Kids stuff. As adults, they are only able to face Pennywise by embracing their childhood selves. Bill, stuttering, Richie in glasses, and Eddie with his aspirator all serve as symbols of regression, but a beautiful regression, a necessary regression. We'll play. Come on back and we'll see if you remember the simplest thing of all, how it is to be children, secure in belief, and thus afraid of the dark. As kids, they find it in its lair, deep in the sewers of Derry. It is a cosmic creature that feeds on humans. It is an ancient entity from a dimension outside of time and space referred to as the macroverse. The children's imagination acts as a sort of conduit between the real world and the terrifying possibilities of the macroverse. It had discovered a depth of imagination here that was almost new, almost of concern. This quality of imagination made the food very rich. The final manifestation of it is not its true form, but the closest to what their human brains can recognize, thus forth a monstrous galactic spider. They are not unafraid of fighting it, but they fight it anyway. As children, the losers destroy it by believing they can, manifesting, if you will. Bill goes to the edge of the macroverse with it, and he makes it back, but it gets away, weakened but not dead. The losers make their blood oath that if it returns, they will come back home to Derry and kill it for good. And they make good on that promise. As an adult, Bill goes to the edge of the macroverse with it, but he can't make it back. Lost in the darkness, Richie and Ben come to him and bring him back. When they find their belief again is when they can finally kill it. Oh shit! I believe in all of those things. Love shapes reality by fueling the losers' imaginations, and their imaginations is what allows them to reach each other in a deeper, more intimate way in their minds that you can't otherwise do. Art, creativity, and imagination, as Andrew says in that awesome video of him crying,
it can get us to places that we can't get to any other way.
But love can also be manipulated, as the children experience toxic attachments and abuse, warping their reality into something dangerous. But ultimately, it's the love forged from experiences and laughter that gives them the strength to defy the darkness, proving that when you love like a kid, anything is possible. Love isn't the antidote for fear. It's what makes fear possible. To love is to become vulnerable, to open ourselves to the inevitable pain of loss, change, and time. When the adult losers emerge from the sewers, fewer than before, the world they know has been shattered. The losers will leave Derry once more. Time will pass, and they will forget. They will forget what they feared, but they will also forget who they loved. And that's the true horror here. Mike, the last to stay behind, in the final words of the book, writes, "I loved you guys, you know. I loved you so much." The fact that they will forget is heartbreaking, but it's a part of the novel's exploration of what memory, especially childhood memory, means. We hold on to what we can, but ultimately time erodes. The epilogue, however, gives us a poignant moment of triumph. Bill gears up old Silver, his oversized childhood bike. His catatonic wife sat behind him. He tells her to hold on, and she does. In a beautiful and fantastical image, Bill races through the streets of Derry on old Silver, feeling like a kid again. He contemplates all he and the losers have been through and all they will forget. He sees them as they were, as they always will be in some part of his mind, and his heart breaks with love and horror. Audra, to no surprise, returns to consciousness on the bike, and I don't care if it's unrealistic, I don't care if it's idealistic. It is a moving and illuminating scene, and what is the damn point of reading a book if not to be moved and illuminated? Confronting our deepest fears allows us to rediscover the most vital parts of who we are. Mortality gives courage and love meaning, as their value comes from knowing life is fleeting, a truth most evident when you think about being a kid again. This is the essence of it. It is the greatest love story ever written because love, in its truest form, is both beautiful and terrifying. By opening ourselves to love, we open ourselves to fear and to loss, but we also open ourselves up to something larger than just ourselves. To think that childhood has its own sweet secrets and confirms mortality, and that mortality defines all courage and love. To think that what has looked forward must also look back, and that each life makes its own imitation of immortality. A wheel. It has always been a book that made me feel good. I've read it thrice now and I couldn't quite explain it. I felt like I was coming out of the sewers too. This novel fills me with love for my younger self, and it makes me look at my childhood fears with more compassion. I know determining the greatest love story ever written is an impossible task, subjective, debatable, shaped by individual experience. But I think I've made a strong case here today. And even if I didn't convince you that it is the greatest love story ever written, I hope I've convinced you to look at it through a softer lens. Go check out it from your local library. If you've already read the written edition, listen to the audiobook. It is a different experience. And genuinely, if you have not read this novel before, I recommend listening to the audiobook first, which is the only book I have ever said that for. Steven Weber goes in. Rent was fucking due. You know what I mean? If you liked this video, please like this video. If you have something to add, please comment. Let me know what your greatest love story ever written is. Bonus points if it is not a traditional romance or love story. So fun. Let me know. Happy Valentine's Day. I love you all. Get home safe. Bye now.